Emergency Operations Plan, Legislative Update, August 2019. As part of our 86th Texas Legislative Update series, this video addresses emergency operations plans. The passage of Senate Bill 11 has resulted in numerous amendments to Chapter 37, Section 108 of the Texas Education Code. School districts, open enrollment charters, and public junior college emergency operation plans, EOPs, must now address prevention in addition to mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery, as defined by the Texas School Safety Center in conjunction with the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and the Commissioner of Education or Higher Education, as applicable. Once these definitions are released, they will be communicated to districts and charter schools. The EOP must provide for training in responding to an emergency for district employees, including substitute teachers, and measures to ensure district employees, including substitute teachers, have classroom access to a telephone, including a cellular telephone, or another electronic communication device, allowing for immediate contact with district emergency services or emergency service agencies, law enforcement agencies, health departments, and fire departments. The EOP must also provide for measures to ensure district communications technology and infrastructure are adequate to allow for communication during an emergency. If the EOP applies to a school district or open enrollment charter school, the plan must provide for mandatory drills and exercises to prepare district students and employees for responding to an emergency, as required in Section 114 of the Texas Education Code, Chapter 37. This newly added section will be addressed later in this presentation. A school district or open enrollment charter must include the following in its multi-hazard EOP: a chain of command that designates the individual responsible, and others in their absence, for making final decisions during a disaster or emergency situation. And they must include provisions that address physical and psychological safety for responding to a natural disaster, active shooter, and any other dangerous scenario identified by the Texas Education Agency or the Texas School Safety Center. This will be included in the updated EOP toolkit provided by the Texas School Safety Center. The EOP must also include provisions for ensuring the safety of students in portable buildings, and the passing of Senate Bill 11 has charged the Texas School Safety Center to develop a list of best practices for ensuring the safety of public school students receiving instruction in portable buildings. The center is also tasked to provide information regarding the list of best practices to school districts using portable buildings for student instruction. This list is being finalized and will be updated and marked prominently on the Texas School Safety Center website by September 1, 2019. The EOP must also include provisions for ensuring that students and district personnel with disabilities are provided equal access to safety during a disaster or an emergency situation, and must provide provisions for giving immediate notification to parents or guardians in circumstances involving a significant threat to the health or safety of students, including the identification of the individual with responsibility for overseeing this notification. In addition, school district and open enrollment charter EOPs must provide provisions for supporting the psychological safety of students, district personnel, and the community during the response and recovery phase following a disaster or emergency situation. These support provisions must be aligned with best practice-based programs and research-based practices, recommended under Section 161.325 of the Health and Safety Code. These support provisions must also include strategies for ensuring required training for suicide prevention, grief-informed and trauma-informed care, also is provided to appropriate school personnel and must include training on integrating psychological safety and suicide prevention strategies in the EOP. These trainings must come from a list of recommended trainings established by the Commissioner and the Texas School Safety Center. Further, these support provisions must also include strategies and procedures for integrating and supporting physical and psychological safety and implementing trauma-informed policies. Once these provisions are released, they will be communicated to districts and charter schools. The multi-hazard EOP for a school district or open enrollment charter must also include a policy for providing a substitute teacher access to school campus buildings and materials necessary to carry out the duties of an employee during an emergency or a mandatory emergency drill. The policy must also provide the name of each individual on the Safety and Security Committee, along with the date of each committee meeting during the preceding year. House Bill 2195 also amends Section 108 by requiring the Emergency Operation Plan to include a policy for responding to an active shooter emergency. Another direct result of the passage of Senate Bill 11 was the addition of Section 1081 in Chapter 37 of the Texas Education Code. This new section addresses the requirement of public hearings on multi-hazard EOP noncompliance for public school districts and open enrollment charters. The Texas School Safety Center is now charged with reviewing emergency operations plans for noncompliance. If the Board of Trustees receives a notice of noncompliance, the board must hold a public hearing to notify the public of the district's failure to submit or correct deficiencies in a multi-hazard EOP or failure to report the results of a safety and security audit to the Texas School Safety Center as required by law, the dates during which the district has not been in compliance, and the names of each member of the Board of Trustees, as well as the superintendent serving in that capacity during the dates the district was not in compliance. Each of these must be provided in writing to each person in attendance at this hearing. Also at this hearing, the district must give members of the public a reasonable opportunity to appear before the board and speak on the issue of the district's noncompliance. The district must also provide written confirmation to the Texas School Safety Center that this public meeting was held. Section 1082 was also amended to Chapter 37 of the Texas Education Code. This section addresses additional requirements for public school district or open enrollment charter schools regarding multi-hazard EOP noncompliance. If the Texas Education Agency receives notice from the Texas School Safety Center of a school district's failure to submit a multi-hazard EOP, the commissioner may appoint a conservator who may order the district to adopt, implement, and submit a multi-hazard EOP. If a district fails to comply with a conservator's order within the timeframe imposed by the commissioner may appoint a board of managers to oversee the operations of the district. The commissioner may adopt rules to administer this section. As rules are adopted, they will be communicated to districts and charter schools. The Texas Education Code, Chapter 37.114, was also added as a result of the passage of Senate Bill 11. This section addresses emergency evacuations and mandatory school drills for public school districts and open enrollment charters. Specifically, it states that the commissioner, in consultation with the Texas School Safety Center and the state fire marshal, must adopt rules that provide procedures for evacuating and securing school property during an emergency, and that designate the number of mandatory school drills to be conducted each semester, not to exceed 8 drills, including designating the number of evacuation fire exit drills, as well as lockdown, lockout, shelter-in-place, and evacuation drills. To be clear, this states that no more than 8 drills may be required by the commissioner during a semester. However, districts may conduct additional drills to meet the district or school's needs. The Texas School Safety Center is currently working with the State Fire Marshal and the Texas Education Agency to develop these requirements. As rules are adopted, they will be communicated to districts and charter schools. Senate Bill 11 added Section 2071 to Chapter 37 of the Texas Education Code. This new section addresses the requirement of school district, open enrollment charters, and public junior colleges' multi-hazard EOPs to be submitted to the Texas School Safety Center for review and verification. The Texas School Safety Center is required to establish a random or need-based cycle for the center's review and verification of these multi-hazard EOPs. This cycle must provide for each plan to be reviewed at regular intervals as determined by the center. A school district, open enrollment charter school, or public junior college district must submit its multi-hazard EOP on request of the center and in accordance with the center's review cycle. The Texas School Safety Center must review each district's multi-hazard EOP submitted and verify that the plan meets the requirements of Section 37.108, or they must provide the district with written notice describing the deficiencies and stating that the district must correct the plan deficiencies and resubmit to the center. As this cycle is developed, it will be communicated to districts, charter schools, and community colleges. If a district fails to submit its multi-hazard EOP to the Texas School Safety Center for review, the center will provide the district with written notice stating that the district has failed to submit a plan and must submit a plan to the center for review and verification. The Texas School Safety Center may approve a multi-hazard EOP that has deficiencies if the district or charter school submits a revised plan that the center determines will correct the deficiencies. If 3 months after the date of initial notification of a plan's deficiencies, or 3 months after the failure to submit a plan, a district or charter school has not corrected the deficiencies or has failed to submit a plan, the Texas School Safety Center will provide written notice to the district or charter school and TEA that the district or charter school has not complied and must comply immediately. Please note, the Texas School Safety Center plans to work with any entity in addressing any plan deficiencies to enter into compliance. Once this process is finalized, it will be communicated to districts and charter schools. If a school district still has not corrected the plan deficiencies or has failed to submit a plan 6 months after the date of initial notification, the Texas School Safety Center shall provide written notice to the district stating that the district must hold a public hearing and that the commissioner is authorized to appoint a conservator. Any document or information collected, developed, or produced during the review and verification of multi-hazard EOPs is not subject to disclosure under Chapter 552 of the Government Code. Again, the Texas School Safety Center plans to work with any entity in addressing plan deficiencies so that they may enter into compliance. Once this process is finalized, it will be communicated to districts and charter schools. For additional information and resources, please visit the Texas School Safety Center website.